Who is the TikTok generation? Well, basically, the TikTok generation is Generation Z, the Zoomers, and the generation that was born in the 2010s, sometimes called Generation Alpha. Now, I know why they've done that. It's to restart the Greek alphabet, but calling a generation Generation Alpha, especially in light of current memology and the current lexicon, is a bit odd to say the least, but we'll leave that aside. But the TikTok generation is, in fact, fundamentally different than almost every previous generation, by a large measure and a large degree. But when I say that they're different, I don't mean that they are physiologically different, psychologically different. I don't think the human hardware that we've been installed with has changed fundamentally in the span of 20, 30, 40 years. No, I'm talking about how they have grown up and how they've interacted with the environment. And a lot of people have a misunderstanding of what's afoot and what's going on, particularly the older generations. And they don't understand that whatever the TikTok generation is, how they interact, engage with each other, this is going to be defining for all human interaction going forward, which is to say, there's no turning back. What am I specifically referring to? I'm referring to not just social media addiction, but the social media requirement. What do I mean by this? Well, let's start with a little anecdote. I've spoken to a few teenagers who are Generation Z, young Generation Z, born in the late 2000s, and they have told me, for example, that it's actually impossible for them to do their schoolwork without, say, being on Discord, that there are work groups within school that they need to get access to in order to get their schoolwork done, their homework done, and so it's a requirement that they have Discord as an example. Or less so a requirement, but many Generation Zers that I've talked to who talk about Instagram. So, for example, if you're a Zoomer and you meet somebody and you don't have an Instagram, you're viewed as an oddball. In fact, it's just a given that you have an Instagram with some panoply of photographs, usually of yourself and some other things. And if you don't, it's a little odd. Now, of course, I'm going off of anecdotes here. But generally speaking, I've encountered so many of these anecdotes that can't just be a coincidence. You could say it's just the circles you run in, maybe, but I've talked to many, many normies of all stripes, flavors, and ages, and I've talked to many normies of the Zoomer generation, and I can assure you that the things that are being described here are very, very common, which is to say both a literal dependence on these technologies and social media, with the example of Discord being required to get one's schoolwork done in order to work in groups, or the social expectation that you simply have in Instagram if you want to have any semblance of a social life. These things are not entirely new because, in essence, it's a bit like the old game of keeping up with the Joneses. It's just keeping up with the Joneses on steroids to a degree that is scarcely comprehensible. But the difference, I think, fundamentally is in the traditional setup of keeping up with the Joneses, there was a degree of illusion there, which is to say, you felt compelled to do so, but it wasn't an outright requirement in the same sense that, say, a 15-year-old teenager who needs to get his homework done needs to be on Discord to be on call with people to get work done in a group. Or if you want to have a social life, you absolutely have to make use of social media. Now, of course, there are probably going to be exceptions here. I'm talking about broad trends and tendencies. There are obviously people who don't make use of social media, and they are, in fact, Zoomers. However, broadly speaking, generally speaking, if you just look around observationally and you interact with people, almost everyone has some kind of social media presence and has a presence to varying degrees that is important or less important, but generally speaking, it's far more important than the equivalents of social media were back in the day for previous generations. Now, the real question is how this has affected them. And a lot of people jump the gun, especially older folk, and assume that this is not going to continue in perpetuity, that this is just a phase or a fad, and that eventually the Zoomers and Generation Alpha, what an odd term, will become quote-unquote adults. Well, let's look at the anecdotal data again. Look at the whole idea of keeping up with the Kardashians, grown-ups, adults, who are obsessed with social media. I don't think there's going to be some cutoff going forward where people think, well, I'm 35 now. I guess it's time for me to get off Instagram and TikTok and what have you. And I don't think things like the wall, as it's sometimes put, are going to prevent women from being on social media because, again, look at the actual data. Look at older women in their 30s, even in their 40s, doing this thing. Matter of fact, here's a nice anecdote. You might be familiar with these so-called TikTok shorts and these bizarre TikTok challenges, as they're called. Sometimes it's to walk around without a bra in the case of women, or bikini challenges or what have you. And there was, unironically, a woman who was 40 who was participating in the braless challenge. And who knows if she was lying? She probably was. She looks pretty well preserved. Maybe that's her whole shtick. Who knows? But the point is that this will continue in perpetuity, and this whole notion of keeping up with the Joneses will also continue, and people will feel compelled because if they don't, they will be left behind and they will be cut out of the social order. Now, in will come the argument, of course, that these young folk are damaging themselves, and they probably are. In fact, it's kind of undeniable. There have actually been studies showing that particularly young girls or teenage girls are very damaged by social media, by and large, due to the fact that the way females operate in terms of conflict mediation is they don't duke it out like guys do. They tend to be spiteful and make use of social sabotage. They talk behind people's backs, things like that. So there's no question that it's actually damaging to a lot of these folk, but I don't think it's just a question of that. It's a question of the perception, at least, that it's an absolute necessity. Now, if tomorrow all of them decided, hey, I don't need this anymore, we're going to get off, then yeah, it wouldn't be necessary. But that's not what they're going to decide. People think, oh, they're going to get older, they're going to get more mature, eventually they're going to get off it. No, this generation going forward, and every generation after that, is going to be living and breathing social media, and there's no point of return. The point of no return occurred at least a few years ago, probably a lot longer. And going forward, if you want to be somebody, then you need to have a social media presence. And so people wonder why the younger guys, mostly normies wonder this, are so obsessed with looks, because everything is mediated by this extremely visual medium, and you don't have the opportunity to present anything else. And so all you have is the visual, i.e. your looks. And this leads, of course, to another potential issue, and that is a stunting of personality growth and character development. Now, I'm not saying this is happening, but it certainly could be a possibility going forward if you consider that everything is dependent on social media, and if you do not participate, you're left out. On the other hand, putting up photos and videos and TikTok shorts is not going to enhance your personality. It's certainly not going to build character. And so what I do think might be happening is a kind of stunting of inner growth. That sounds a bit nebulous, but basically what I mean, that people are not working on their characters in terms of being decent people. It's all about that visual external projection. Do I think that's good? No. But that seems to be the way things are going. And this sort of damage is not going to be easy to avoid. And I do think we're going to see going forward, of course, the continuation of all of this, as I've mentioned. But you're going to see a different type of human being emerge from this in terms of their personality, in terms of how they interact with the world. And it's not going to be pretty. So on the one hand, I can observe that this is here to stay. On the other hand, I can also observe that this is in fact damaging to the individuals who are participating. I mean, sure, it's in all likelihood going to be the case that the females who are participating in braless TikTok shorts at age 20 will still do it at age 30 and 40. I don't know about age 50, although who knows, given certain trends. They might establish themselves as VTubers or use some kind of filter. There are all sorts of possibilities for this sort of thing. And many of these possibilities are already employed right now. Concern I have, and it's an anecdotal observation, is just how stunted some of these personalities I've encountered have been in terms of just interacting, in terms of having interests. None of them have any interest. That's the other thing. They have zero interest in things outside of social media presence, social media participation. That's all that's running around in their heads. And that is a bit of a scary thought. Now, of course, there's going to be some subsector of these people that are not obsessed with this stuff, that are not participating left and right. And they will probably be the quote unquote leaders of the Zoomers going forward, the ones who are going to participate in politics and economics and what have you. But there will be huge swaths of them who will forever be chained to this new medium and also be damaged as a consequence. And like all forms of technology human beings have invented throughout history, we just release it and just hope for the best. And most of the time, it's just a terrible double edged sword. And we just need to live with the consequences without any solution in sight. So I'll be long gone by then, but look forward to your 60-year-old Zoomer doing her bikini TikTok short with a filter and all sorts of new forms of technology that will make her look like she's 25, even though she's obviously not. As always, thank you for tuning in. Please hit the like button, subscribe, comment, share, all that YouTube jazz. And if I'm still alive, I'll check you out later. Take care. Enjoy your weekend. May the gods watch over you. If you liked this video, please like, share, and subscribe. And if you enjoy my content, please consider making a donation or becoming a patron. Thanks for watching.